In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Wake up, America.
Can if they step up and do it, and that's what we need. We're in crisis right now, Lou. The only way that we're going to collapse is because of an internal threat. The government consists in taking as much money as possible from one class of citizens and giving it to another class.
You've reached the office of Dr. Randy Arrington. Please have a seat, and the doctor will be with you in just a moment.
Wake up, America. I think I got something to say to you. This is Office Hours with Dr. A, and I do love the United States of America, and I want you to love the United States of America, too. Today, we are honored to have former Congressman Bob Livingston from the great state of Louisiana with us on the show. He was my congressman, and he is still my friend, and I'm honored to call him that. Bob, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Randy. It's good to talk with you again. It's been a long time since we've seen one another, but I'm glad to hear you got this radio show, and I thank you for asking me to be on it.
You know, the first time I met you was I got on an airplane going up to Washington, D.C. You were on the airplane, too, and they, for some reason, put me up in the first class. I sat right by you. And then Marion Barry got on the airplane with a couple of his armed guards. And you at first, because I was armed, because I was with U.S. Customs, thought I was part of his entourage. And, of course, I had to make sure you knew that wasn't the case. Then I found out you were my congressman, so we started talking about various things and, very intellectual, fun conversations for me. And then at one point you talked to me about you'd gone to a cocktail party in D.C. Tom Clancy was there and was trying to talk you into buying his new book, Clearing President Danger. You told him, I'm going to wait till that book comes out in paperback. And so I knew that, put that in the back of my head. And the next day when I had lunch, I went down to your congressional office there. I think it was in the Rayburn building, and gave my copy, hardback copy, to your receptionist, and she gave it to you. And that's kind of how we, our friendship started. One of the last times I saw you was when I went to meet you, and we were going to have lunch together in the House of Representatives cafeteria there, where you still be able to buy that navy bean soup for, 29 cents a bowl, whatever. And you were an hour and 45 minutes late because you at that time were the House Appropriations Chair. By the way, listeners, Congressman Livingston, when he was there as House Appropriations Chair, was the last time the federal budget was actually, where it should be and balanced. And he had a lot to do with that as the House Appropriations Chair. But you came in and you showed me a legal piece of paper with like 30 bullets of things you had to get completed, I think, within the next day or two. And I really, empathize with you. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do, and just going back to that first time we met, the reason we started talking was because I looked down. I wanted to make sure that the guy next to me who had a gun on his hip was somebody I really wanted to talk to and not be afraid of.
I was honored.
But one thing you omitted is that you were kind enough to invite me to go on a trial Border Patrol run with the folks down there who were doing their interdictions. I remember that well.
I do remember that, and I was honored to have you come down there. And you were instrumental in getting the U.S. Customs air and marine operations that was stationed at Naval Air Station in Belle Chasse, Louisiana, out of Billy Tozan's district and moved to your district up there in Hammond. And you worked a deal with Tozan, made him happy. I remember I took a lot of heat for that, because the guys wearing the suits in D.C. were mad at me because I contacted you directly. And I said, this guy's my friend. I'm going to always talk to him, and you can't stop me from doing that. But you helped us with that, and they're still there to this day, and they're doing a really good job. But this series we're talking about, Bob, is about the presidency and different paradoxes that American people have about the role of the president. Back in 2008, I created a course, a political science course for my UCLA students called Presidential Politics and Homeland Security. On day one of the class, I posed 7 questions to my students, and during the duration of the course, I motivated them to think analytically about each of these using a rational thought process, which most people don't want to do. These concepts were also the ones they could choose to, we had discussions during class time, during the 12 weeks there at UCLA, and then write their term paper. I always encourage anybody that I'm interacting with, students or not, to adopt any political perspective that they want. You want to be a liberal, be a liberal. You want to be a communist, be a communist. As we considered and debated different possibilities, and I never stifled them. I gave them the latitude to speak their piece. I did use a Platonic style of argument where I kind of worked them into a corner, and they only had one way to come out, because I speak the truth, Bob, and then I endure the consequences. But I'm hoping that you will look at these questions and answer them from your perspective and experience and expertise, and we get some additional perspective on them from you being a member of Congress. So here's my first question to you. This is Bob Livingston. Is your personal freedom a critical component of homeland security, Bob?
Well, my personal freedom is a critical component of me and my family, first of all, and to all of my neighbors and my fellow Americans, whether I'm in Louisiana or Washington or wherever I am. I think freedom is the core ingredient for what makes America great. And without it, frankly, we just become another despotism, monarchy, dictatorship, or whatever, and people naturally suffer. So, yes, in terms of homeland security, the prime purpose of homeland security is to protect our freedoms, because without it, we are going to be a mess.
Segueing from that, in your opinion, Bob, who in our system, who protects your individual liberty and your sovereignty as an American citizen?
Well, our military abroad, our law enforcement agencies, federal, state, and local, and then our neighborhood watch programs. I mean, it's not. Fortunately, we don't assign to any one single group the role of protecting our security. We have, as a great nation, we have enemies abroad, and under our political leadership, our president is the commander-in-chief of all of our armed forces. His responsibility is to keep us safe, particularly abroad, against all enemies. We can get into a debate as to whether or not some presidents do a better job than others, but I'll leave that to you. Point is that without a strong national defense, we're vulnerable abroad. Without a strong and capable law enforcement a group of people in various agencies, we're vulnerable here. We want to be safe on our streets. We want good, strong policemen to protect us. And I get distressed when I see either our defense forces undercut for any reason, or our the various components of our electorate making fun of or undermining the role of our police forces. We need these people if we're going to remain free.
Now, as a congressman and an appropriations chair, I'm going to ask a dovetail question on that. Is a strong, vibrant, growing economy in the United States vital to our homeland security?
Well, it is indeed, because without a strong, vibrant economy, we can't afford strong national defense. We can't afford strong law enforcement, capable law enforcement that protects the interests of minorities as well as the majority. We can't enforce our laws, and so we need to pay the bill And the way we pay the bill in a free economy is to have a strong economy where our people work, support their families and their communities, but also pay their taxes. And if we undermine our wherewithal to afford these vital services, frankly, we become vulnerable. So our homeland security is very dependent on a strong economy.
If you were president of the United States, now I told you, we had a conversation once where I told you this. I said, you know what, Bob? If I was president of the United States, one of the first things I would do is stop all foreign aid for 1 year, and then I would allow the American people through referendum, which we don't have at the federal level, but I would create that, to decide where our foreign aid is going to go, and we vote on it every year. Do we want to continue to give it to this country, to that cause, whatever? And I remember what you told me was, Randy, in the big scheme of things, that is government and the appropriations, that the foreign aid is minuscule. Is that still the case?
It is still the case. Most people, if you'd ask the average person on the street, they think that foreign aid amounts to about 30% of the American budget. And indeed, it amounts to less than 1%. And we have friends and enemies abroad. And some of our friends do not have the strength, do not have the capabilities that we have. In fact, most countries don't, for that matter. But some of them are weak but trying democracies. If they have our philosophy and they want to succeed and keep their people free, it behooves us to support those governments in order that we will have friends. If we just close ourselves off in the entire world, withdraw as we have done in the last few years, and not help our friends defend themselves, then our enemies may take over, and we may find ourselves surrounded. In today's world, this troubled world of ours, we find that Red China, that Russia, which is increasingly a problem, North Korea, and a lot of other despotisms are moving in because we have been reluctant to step up to the plate and help our friends.
So you're saying isolationism, which a lot of our founding fathers believed in that, isolationism is a losing strategy, a losing theory for the United States in this global existence that we have right now. Isolationism is not.
Well, not just now. Yeah, the answer is yes. Isolationism is a dangerous thing because we're the strongest, freest people in the world, and if we want to maintain that strength and that importance of our role in the world, we've got to help our friends. We've got to be alert to what's going on in the rest of the world. We tried not to before World War I. We didn't want to have anything to do with the war in Europe prior to our involvement there. And frankly, the whole continent of Europe blew up and other parts of the world as well. And we realized that was a mistake. So we started beefing up our military. After that, we relaxed a long while, and then Nazi Germany started taking over, and the Japanese took advantage of our weakness, thinking that they could defeat us. And we had to ramp up again. And, of course, we rallied them because we had time to build our armaments over a period of a couple of years and face them head on. But after World War II, we relaxed, and we really almost lost completely in Korea. We didn't have the armaments to meet the onslaught of the communists from the north in Korea. And you go throughout history, and we ramp up, and as long as we are capable of ramping up, that's a good deal. But now, in the age of missile technology and computers and everything that happens in a just an hourly, 24-hourly basis, or even a minute-to-minute basis, we don't necessarily have the time to ramp up. And we've already cut our defenses below levels, in some instances, such as our Navy, below the level it was prior to World War II. We are taking a big chance at cutting ourselves unnecessarily. I don't think we can afford isolationism, and we certainly won't have the time to ramp up if we're severely threatened in the near future.
I agree with that. I got before we get to the break and the third question here, I'm segueing. I told you what I would do if I was elected president. Let me ask you this question. If you were elected president, that's hypothetical, I know, you were the president of the United States, I want you to tell me one thing you would do to help our economy, this is domestic policy, and one thing you would do in foreign policy that would help the United States rally and come back to greatness, if you want to call it that. What would you do?
Well, I'd recognize our friends and stand with our allies, and I would not sign that Iranian nuclear deal that was just recently signed by the president. That would be on the international front. And the best thing I could do domestically is to revise the tax code. I mean, it's tens of thousands of pages, and we don't need that. I love the suggestion by more than one of our candidates for Congress for the presidency right now, saying that we can just have a few pages of tax code. Let's put the IRS out of business. That would leaves me no end, because it would restore freedom and ingenuity to the American people and lift the lids of regulation and taxation that are really driving our economy into the ground.
I agree with that. Having it be a fairer system of still a little bit of progressive taxation, but have everybody pay something into the system, whether it's $1 or $1,001 based on your earnings, whatever. I mean, if you want to call it flat tax, what I like that too. You know, everybody pays 12%, whatever. But everybody's got to pay something. Right now, that's not the case. Mr. Romney was correct when they caught him on hidden camera there, hidden microphone, saying there's 47% of the people that don't pay any taxes. It's actually more like 49 or 50 that don't pay anything. And so I think they shouldn't even be allowed to vote on something that they're voting on giving themselves a piece of the treasury. Of course I'm going to vote for the guy that I think is going to give me the most money, because that's in my self-interest. And I think we should go to something like that, revise that. I think Cruz is saying that, and put all those IRS agents on the southern border. Lou, do you want to take a break now, or?
Yes, we need to take a quick break, so let's go
Very
ahead
good.
and do that, and we'll be right back.
Wake up, Maggie, I think I got something to say.
Dan Rather?
What's your name, sir?
And what is your name, sir? Take your hands off of me. Dan Rather?
Unless you intend to arrest me, don't push me, please.
I know you will, but don't push me. Take your hands off of me unless you plan to arrest me.
Wait a minute.
According to me and Bunny, this show's not big. It's huge!
Mr. Trump, what are your thoughts on how should we go about making sure we can protect innocent life in this country?
We're going to be looking at a lot of different things. And, a lot of people are saying that, and a lot of people are saying that bad things are happening out there. We're going to be looking at that and plenty of other things.
Donald, question right over here. What are you going to do as president in regards to the Common Core? What actions are you going to take?
We're going to be looking at a lot of different things. And, a lot of people are saying that, and a lot of people are saying that bad things are happening out there. We're going to be looking at that and plenty of other things.
That is like he can say that for anything.
Yes! It's just insert issue.
A lot of things.
Donald, what are we going to do for lunch?
We're going to be looking at a lot of different things. And, a lot of people are saying that, and a lot of people are saying that bad things are happening out there. We're going to be looking at that and plenty of other things.
It's According to Me and Bunny, Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on K98 Talk.
Wondering why you're up early with us on a Sunday morning making a cocktail? News lately got you drinking? Hungover from the mainstream media by Sunday? We are, and we got you covered.
We sure do. We got your hangover cure for those weekly news blues. So sit back, top off your mimosa, and add some Baileys to that coffee.
Take a match to your copy of the New York Times. Light, funny, and oh yeah, news with booze.
And a lot of laughter.
Welcome to Bloody Marys and Broadsheets.
Okay, we're back, and we're talking with former Congressman Bob Livingston from the great state of Louisiana. And you know what? I think Bob went to Tulane University. Is that true, Bob?
Oh yeah, 2 degrees, undergraduate and a law degree.
All right, I won't hold the law degree against you, but I taught at Tulane. It was a wonderful university. I miss it a lot. Let's continue here with our talk about the presidency in the United States and sovereignty, that sort of stuff. I wrote a doctoral dissertation called The Chain Link Theory of the Soviet Collapse. And in that document, I discussed that one of the major reasons that the Soviet Union collapsed, not the only reason, but one of the major reasons the Soviet Union collapsed was the overt presence and the insidious pressure of 143 different nationalities that were combined within the borders of one. It was a great nation, a large nation, but combined within the borders of one nation. Here's my question to you, Bob. Could too much diversity cause America to collapse as a free nation?
I think that certainly a nation can lose its way if it loses its culture, and I guess you could say that too much diversity can indeed threaten our ability, our unity. When James Madison devised our Constitution, his primary goal was to protect the minorities from the tyranny of the majority. And in our various parts of our history, we've experienced where some people have tyrannized people of different backgrounds or different faiths or whatever, whether here in this country or elsewhere. This country went through slavery, and we fortunately rejected that, but only after the expenditure of about 700,000 lives. The country went through a terrible trauma to get rid of slavery. Now we protect our minorities. We were conscious about the rights of our minorities, and we are bringing in increasing numbers of people with different cultures and different backgrounds. Some of them are coming across the border with insufficient attention to who they are and what they are and whether or not they have any kind of education at all, whether they have any diseases. And others now that Europe is faced with this onslaught in the Middle East, we're talking about bringing in lots of people without adequate vetting, adequate inspection of who and what they are and what they represent. Coming from a very dangerous part of the world. That kind of thing poses a threat. So clearly your premise is right. But I continue to believe that Madison was right. He believed in checks and balances. That's why he created a system with the president, the executive branch, versus the legislative branch, the House and the Senate, versus the Supreme Court. To inspect the laws that are passed by the legislative branch. The whole point, again, was to prevent the minority from suffering at the hands or suffering the tyranny of the majority. This has created a strong nation. This Constitution of ours. And out of many, the idea was to form a single unit. We've had 50 states, that began with 13, but 50 states who each have their own communities, their own cities, towns, and government in each one, but they're governed by the single constitution, and they form one nation. And that is just as important today as it was in the days of James Madison and Thomas Jefferson and all those brilliant people back then. I think it's critically important that we remain one nation. They fought a war over that during the Civil War to try to divide the nation. The North won, and I think it's fortunate for all of us that we remain a single nation. I wouldn't want to just keep allowing people to come in and set up their own cultures, their own legal systems, such as Sharia law, which is threatening us today, because if in fact we allow that, our country will be dissipated, and we will no longer be a unified nation. Likewise, I've always been in favor of adopting English as the primary language for this country. It has been our primary language since the inception of the nation. There are some places where you can go where you can only hear Spanish. Other places where you can hear virtually any other dialect, any other language from around the world. I don't have any problem with people speaking other languages in this country. That's great. They're entitled to. But they ought to be required to learn English, because only by learning English and being assimilated into the system will they be able to have a future for employment and a future to participate in the great America that we all hope survives for the future.
You know, on day one of all my classes, I walk up and introduce myself to the students, and then I pull out an American flag, and I hold that. I fought for that American flag my entire life, as you did in the Navy as well. And so I hold that, cradle that flag, and I tell my students, I love the United States of America, and I want you to love the United States of America too. You know what, Bob? They don't hear that from those mega-liberal cultural Marxist professors, but they hear it from Dr. Arrington. In my humble opinion, there's no room in this country for hyphenated Americanism. You use the term assimilation. I like that. That's what the immigrants used to do. They assimilated. They became, as quickly as possible, they Americanized themselves. The one absolutely certain way of bringing the United States, this nation, to total destruction, in my humble opinion, or of preventing it having a possibility of continuing as a sovereign nation based on limited government and freedom, would be to permit it to become this sort of a tangle of squabbling nationalities. And that would cause a huge problem. It's what happened in Russia, and that's what Helene Carrier-Kaus argued. That was the number one reason that the Soviet Union collapsed. I remember when I wrote that doctoral dissertation, I used aviation accident investigation theory to investigate why the Soviet Union collapsed, because in my humble opinion, it was a political accident. It was never meant to happen. It was an accident that happened, and so I looked at all the various things that went into that caused that accident. Bob, do you think the United States will survive till 2025?
Oh, sure. I think we're going to be here for a very long time. But I do think that the great danger threatening our young people is ignorance. You mentioned those university professors who primarily, or for whatever reason, are leaning left, and almost to the point that they exclude anybody who has an opposing opinion. Universities were supposed to be the centers of great thought and diversity of opinion, and they are centralizing into one leftist mentality, one leftist ideology, and that worries me a great deal. But even more than that being a threat, when I turn on television and see one of these man-on-the-street things where a fellow walks around and interviews kids on a college campus and says, who won the Civil War? And one kid says, is that a trick question? And the second kid says, the French? Then I realize, man, we've got a real problem. I mean, some people are just tuning out. And you'd think with more options with the internet and 24-hour news service and talk radio that people would pay more attention. But there are a lot of young people around this country that don't have the vaguest idea about the history of the nation or the principles on which it was founded. And that is the first way that we will lose our nation, whether it's in 2025, which I don't think it will be, but sometime in the next 100 years. And I pray that simply is not going to happen. But people need to wake up. They need to understand. They need to read. They need to listen to the lessons of the past, because we've learned a lot of them, and a lot of them hard way. But if we understand history, we'll have a lot of better of a chance to face the problems of the future.
If you don't understand the true nature, the truth of your history, you are doomed to repeat it and make those same mistakes. You're right. We have to learn from what didn't work and what did work in our nation and in complex human relations, what did and did not work in the past, and push those aspects of those problem-solving techniques into our society. Otherwise, we're going to be doomed to repeating that stuff. When I get on campus, I go up to the board and I write on the board, truth changes. And then I turn around and they look at me like I'm crazy. I said, you know what, class? Truth changes. You know why truth changes? Because it's subject to human interpretation. And today we have the Constitution subject to human interpretation by Ivy League trained attorneys, lawyers, who that's their job. And we are, in about 3 weeks, we're going to do a series on this show on cultural Marxism and what that's all about and how that's affecting the mindset of our students and our people in society, even the ones that don't go to college, and how they're using political correctness to dumb us down to a level where we will hate the United States, Bob, and hate our upbringing in the United States, even though it has most likely been very good to us as individuals, because when they get us to do that, they identify who is the culprit that's responsible for your personal oppression, then that makes us as a society as a whole and individually susceptible to this cultural Marxist rape that's going to happen to us. Mind rape is what I call it, and the inevitable revolution that Marxists believe will still happen. They still think it's going to happen. How does truth change? Okay, let me give you a perfect example. In 1491, the world was flat. Now, that was considered the truth until that guy from, where did he come from, Italy, went out and said, no, Chris Columbus said, no, it's not. It's actually round. So the truth changes because it's subject to human interpretation or the limits of human understanding at that particular time. When you have a scientific revolution, it usually occurs because somebody is looking in the same place, the same familiar place in science, and sees something different. And that's how scientific revolution comes about. Let me ask you this. From a homeland security perspective, does it really matter who's sitting in the White House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, who's the president?
Absolutely it does. I think we've seen a transformational presidency over the last 7 years in the Obama White House. He has been totally unlike anybody who's preceded him in the Democrat Party or the Republican Party. And that's not an ethnic identity. That's in a philosophical identity. This man said he wanted to transform America, and he has done it. We have become intellectually lazy. We have become a people who are increasingly, through his leadership, are depending on big government to solve all our problems, when we are losing our incentive to solve our own problems and help our own selves and help our own families and our communities. But he has been successfully building the size of government, increasing the role of government, the EPA and all of the other agencies and defenses domestically, while at the same time cutting back on our military and creating a void, a vacuum around the world where the Russians and the Chinese step in and we're withdrawing. And I think he's done a marvelous job at transforming America for the worst. In fact, I have a bumper sticker that I created for my 4 cars. I've got 2 here and 2 in New Orleans, 2 here in Virginia. And it says, socialism changed for the worst. It was based on what I heard him say. He wanted hope and change. Well, he's eliminated hope for most of us, but he's certainly changed America, and he is taking us in a socialistic direction. And I'm hoping the American people will start to think for themselves and stand up and reject that socialistic tendency that he's brought about us in the next election, and opt for a total change of course back toward individual freedom, individual rights, and reduced government. And if they will, then the course of this country is going to be great indeed for the next 100 years or but more. But if they don't, if they take more of the same by frankly voting for Hillary Clinton in an extension of the Obama presidency, then I think we're in deep, deep trouble in the years ahead.
Here's one of the things I teach my students at the university level, or anybody that may be listening, about socialism. Socialism only works in 2 places. It works in a faculty lounge where educated fools dream of it, and it works in hell where the condemned already experience it. And that's the only 2 places it works. And you know, Margaret Thatcher said it doesn't work because eventually you run out of other people's money. And those
I was going to use that myself. I always remember that great thing, and she's absolutely right. But look where socialism has been taken to its ultimate extent. In Soviet Russia, where under the Stalin years they starved 60 million people, and under communist China during the Great Revolution, the Great Leap Forward, or whatever they called it, it may have been 100 million people who were killed. People forget that Nazi Germany, it wasn't just the Nazis, it was National Socialism. And they exterminated 6 million Jews and 6 million other people of various backgrounds, and brought about a world war that killed certainly tens of millions of people, but a heck of a lot more than that. Socialism only works as a utopian idea to make everybody equal, except that according to George Orwell, some pigs are more equal than others. And these are Animal Farm. The socialism requires people to deny themselves, and if they won't do it voluntarily, they have to be forced. Socialism requires force to make everybody live the same way. And inevitably, they live poorer and without commodities. Look at Venezuela today. Venezuela was one of the richest countries on earth only 30 years ago. But under Hugo Chavez and now this idiot that took his place, Maduro, they are trying to escape that place because they've become so impoverished. That's forced socialism. And that's because they learned the great utopian ideal from great communist Cuba, which under Fidel Castro has oppressed, imprisoned, shot, executed his people into oblivion ever since 1957. And that's what you get with socialism. They can't provide incentive, and they don't create wealth, but they can force you to knuckle under, and if you don't comply, ultimately they start imprisoning you, and then later on they start killing you off. If that's what we want for this country, then I will have to move to New Zealand.
Venezuela now is selling their national supply of gold just to feed their people. And you're right, socialism doesn't work because there's no incentive. If I can get the same amount of remuneration and from the treasury, food, milk for my table, whatever, by sitting on my rear end doing nothing, or I can go out and work 60 hours a day defending the country, doing this, that, and the other, but I get nothing more, or I create something, I'm going to say it's not worth it for me to do that. I'm just going to sit on my rear end and do nothing. And that's one of the reasons that socialism fails. It's never really come about, like you were saying in your comment, it's never come about the way Marx and Engels predicted it would. It's always had to be contrived, be forced, and for it to work for any length of time. It worked in the Soviet Union, if you want to call it that, for 74 years. Stalin had to kill 60 million of his own people, put them in the gulags. And Mao, I want to say 140 million. He killed millions and millions of his people to scare the other ones into actually going to the factory and working. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. If I go to the factory, Stalin used to do this, he'd shoot every fifth guy on the line. The other four people were highly motivated after that. And that's the only way you can make it work, if you want to call it that, for a limited amount of time. It is doomed to failure all the time. Bob, do you think the United States could collapse because of an external threat?
Well, with technology being such as it is, it would only take one nuclear warhead burst overhead about 100 miles above our heads to knock out all the electronics in this country. And if that happened and all our electronics were burst, we're such dependent on modern day electronics that we'd all of a sudden find ourselves back in the horse and buggy age, because our cars would stop, our airplanes would stop, fall out of the sky, our computers wouldn't work, our lights, electricity, none of that would work. And so the answer is, unless we're vigilant, unless we exercise strong, capable missile defense, unless we have a strong military to offset any threats from abroad, no matter what kind of technology they've got, the answer is, yeah, sure, we could. But I don't think we will. However, we got to wake up. We've got to realize that we are not independent in this world. It is a global world. There are lots of threats out there, and we've got to be strong and stand up to them. As long as we do, nobody's going to beat us. But if we relax our guard too much, we'll put ourselves in danger.
In my humble opinion, Mrs. Clinton, that's what I call her, and the current occupant in the White House are traitors. Heinous treason is committed by these two individuals during the entire tenure that they were in political power. Now, Machiavelli taught us about power, and I think what he did was he advised the people that had political power, he lowered their moral standard below normal society. And he taught them all to be liars and cheats. Not my friend Congressman Bob Livingston. I know you, and I knew that was different. But nothing is universal. But a lot of them adhere to what Machiavelli taught them. They are liars and cheats. And when they're not kissing babies on the campaign trail, they're stealing their lollipops. I think that, in my humble opinion, I'm going to write an article on this pretty soon. It's time to institute term limits at the federal level. You get 12 years, so that'd be 6 terms in the House, 2 terms in the Senate, and then you go back to your farm. You go back to your home, your law practice, your whatever, and let somebody else come in and take a turn. Now, I know that will be difficult to get because they would be voting themselves out of their job. What do you think about that? It's time for term limits at the federal level, Bob, as a former congressman.
Well, there are 2 answers for that, Randy. First of all, it's not going to happen because senators are not going to vote for it, because if they did, it would mean that House members would be more likely to run against them. Yeah. That's the political answer. The second is that, in my opinion, the best term limit is the ballot box. If you have a vigilant people, you can go and you don't think your guy's doing the job. You go to the polls every 2 years or every 6 years for a senator, and you can vote them out of office. Every 4 years for the president. What I worry about is that our people get lazy. Again, intellectual laziness. If they don't pay attention and they just pull the knob because they've heard his name, that's not a good reason for keeping people in. And yes, there are lots of people who are kept in that don't deserve to be there. But you also have nincompoops who want to run for office that are not necessarily better than the people that they might replace every 6 years or 12 years or whatever the limit is. Our legislature is comprised of human beings, and they're good ones and bad ones, they're smart ones and dumb ones. Just because they're there for 6 or 12 years doesn't mean that they're any smarter or better or more capable than somebody who's been there 20 years. I do think that by the time they've been in 25 or 30 years, if they haven't been able to do it, then they ought to be retired, and that's in the hands of the voter. But I personally think that there is something to be lost because it takes about 3 years to even understand what's going on. And to be able to master the legislative processes. It's very complex. We're a complex country. And if you want good, smart people knowing what they're doing, you don't want a bunch of rookies. Right now we had a large turnover in 2010, I think it was, and then again in 2014. I think some of those folks that came in had never held elective office, and they, in my opinion, are not as astute as some of the folks that have been there a good bit longer. But again, you have good and bad. I just don't think the term limits is the right approach. I don't think it's going to solve anything. We're going to be still facing the problems, and I'd rather have people that know what the hell they're doing tackling those problems than somebody that don't have a clue. Back to the potential collapse of the United States.
I think that heinous treason and the traitors are a huge potential threat to the security of this country because they look like us, they sound like us, they walk in the same circles as us, they speak the same familiar language as us, and yet under the table they're insidiously trying to bring the United States down. Do you think the United States could collapse because of heinous treason and due to an internal threat?
I don't see that that's a big issue right now. I mean, there was an old movie in the 60s, maybe it was right around 1960, called The Manchurian Candidate. And it was about a guy who got elected to the presidency and who undermined, whose goal was to undermine the country. And at the end of the movie, I don't want to give it away, but he didn't make it.
Was that in the 60s or was that 2008, Bob?
I was getting there, Randy.
Okay.
I think, as I said, I think President Obama's outlook on the world is totally different from my own, and I don't think that he's been helpful to the future of this country. In fact, I think his domestic policy has been abysmal and has really tragically messed the economy up. He's grown government too big, and he's undercut our armed forces in the United States. So you can characterize that however you like. I'll just say that he's not my ideal of a good president, and I'm looking forward to his return to the private sector in the next 14 months.
And let's hope he stays there.
I agree with that. And I tell you what, it's been a pleasure today to rekindle my relationship with former Congressman Bob Livingston from the great state of Louisiana, where I spent 18 years living and working for the U.S. Navy and U.S. Customs. I still have 4 of my 5 kids that live down there in the suburbs of the city of New Orleans. And we got a lot of great perspective from a man that's been right there with his hands on the levers of power. And I appreciate you coming and spend this part of your Sunday with us, Bob. And I'd like to have you back sometime if you're willing, and I really do appreciate your expertise.
Thank you very much, Randy. It's been good to be with you. Good luck to all your listeners.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Great to have you, Congressman. Have a great Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, this has been Office Hours with Dr. A, and that's me. And we've got a series now that we're doing over the course of several weeks on the show about the American presidency, which makes sense during this time while we're trying to determine which 2 men or women are going to be the final candidates during the general election. And I entitled this The Paradox of the American Presidency because there are several paradoxes associated with the American presidency, and we've only gotten to 2 of them so far. The last several shows we've been talking about it. Last show we talked about how we as Americans demand a powerful leader that will solve our problems, but we're suspicious of power. We're suspicious of powerful individuals and people that abuse their power. So we got to be very careful about that. We also talked about that we want to elect a president who's like us, a democratic, common man, common person, common woman. But simultaneously, the paradox is we want somebody that's uncommon. We want an individual that's charismatic, visionary, and heroic, sitting in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's a paradox. We're going to get to, I think I have about, 11 total, 13, I can't remember how many I've got. But we're going to talk about this as we move forward in the series and how sometimes our thirst for the heroic can be so endearing that history is meaningless to us without these heroes. And we had our interview with former Congressman Bob Livingston from the great state of Louisiana, where I lived for a long, long time, and 4 of my 5 children still live in that great state. And he talked a little bit about history, and that we seem to be forgetting our history, and that the people that get educated now in the various universities, and I've taught in 6 different universities, that the professors aren't teaching history anymore, or they're teaching a history that is incorrect. They are teaching a rewritten history. and that kind of delved into talk about Marxism and socialism, which we're going to do a long series on that as well in the future if you want to stay with the show. That's what Marxists, communists, socialists do. They rewrite history, and then they teach you in these re-education camps the new history. That's why I taught my students at universities, hey, guess what? Truth changes because truth is subject to human interpretation, and that can change. And Congressman Livingston was discussing that with us. As we move forward on the presidency, I'm going to get more people to come on the show and interview with us, some celebrity-type people, I guarantee you that, and we'll get their perspective. It was fun to listen to Congressman Livingston. He is my friend. He was my congressman, but he was there where the levers of power were at the highest. He was there, and so it was fun to get his perspective. But talking about the presidency as we move forward, I want you to know that the president's primary power, that this is when he's dealing with other individuals in society, the president's primary power is to persuade and to bargain. It's not to command. When we have a chief executive that has to resort to commanding people, and we discussed that earlier about governing people and how we don't like to be governed, meaning controlled. When a chief executive of the United States has to resort to commanding people, he's showing his weakness. Commands only work in sort of a very special set of circumstances. Dr. Richard Neustadt, who wrote the seminal work on presidential power, that's the name of the book, Presidential Power, and the Power of the Modern Chief Executives. He said that the essence of presidential persuasiveness, the essence of a president's persuasive task is to convince men and women that what he wants of them is what they should desire for themselves, for the sake of their own good, for the sake of their own authority. That's what the president's job boils down to in the White House. Now, the American system is a system of shared powers, not separated powers. The president is only one of several, how should I put this, masters of the bureaucracy, masters of our political system. And even the White House staff. Huh?
Masters?
Master. Oh, you like that term? Okay.
No, I don't like that term. I hate that term.
Okay. I mentioned to Livingston, Congressman Livingston, that I thought the nation was now ripe, and I'm going to write an article called The Case for Term Limits. And I think it's time to have term limits. And Lou, you predicted, as I knew in my mind, that he would disagree with that because he's been in the House. He was there for 20-some years. And that's why I said referendum, Lou, because the members of the House, members of the Senate would not consciously vote for ending their jobs, which is what a term limit bill would do.
Well, they tried, right? They tried. It was Newt's Congress tried it at least once, if not twice.
They have symbolic votes all the time that mean absolutely nothing. It's just a sound bite.
They actually got votes for it, though.
Yeah, well, that's somebody that's running for re-election and is, in an unsafe seat,
the House.
And they
They're
want to show the
people.
They want to show the people, hey, I'm on your side. We have to institute term limits, and that's what it was designed for. The founding fathers, in that brilliant document known as the Constitution, they forgot that they should have done that. They didn't realize that the people that got elected for a couple of terms wouldn't earnestly want to go back to their private lives and their families and go back to their farms and ranches and law practice. They thought that would be the case. They didn't realize all power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, to the extent that they don't want to leave. It's very easy to be a congressman. I got to tell you, no offense to Senator Bob Livingston, they work 3 days a week. They work Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They show up at 10 o'clock, they go home at 4. Sometimes they stay late. I understand that. I told you about that instance where I was supposed to have lunch with him at the House of Representatives cafeteria, and he was an hour and 45 minutes late because they were on the floor of the House trying to clean up the last issues before they could recess for, I think it was the Thanksgiving recess or whatever it was at the time. But they only worked 3 days a week. Did you know that?
Yeah, well, it was supposed to be so they could get back to their districts, and it was that. That precedent was set back when it was a part-time Congress, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, they showed up for 60, 90 days, and they went home.
Right, exactly.
They did the country's business. They went home.
Right, but it's not a part-time job anymore.
It's not hard.
It's a career. It's not a part-time job.
It's not complex. Like Lindsey Graham and my brother, Naval Aviator John McCain, want you to think.
Right.
It's not. They've got no special talent. Mr. Obama has no special talent, except I guess to some people, not to me, he sounds good. Maybe Mrs. Clinton sounds good to some people. I almost gag every time I hear either one of them, or Mr. Clinton or Mrs. The First Lady. I almost gag. I don't want to hear them. They just literally turn my stomach. Being a politician is not complex. It's not hard. It has only been allowed to get there because we have allowed it to occur. We let them, and university professors the same way. They make us think it's difficult. It's not, Lou. Who gets what when? That's all it is. And we talked about earlier, I don't know if we were... See, she sometimes will secretly record Dr. A when I don't know it, so she can use those sound bites later against me. If I get a little bit too stinkerish with her, she can pull that out and then put it on Twitter, and then all the Twitter trolls come attacking me, and she shuts me up for a while. That's okay. I understand her dynamic now. That's fine. But I don't know if she's has recorded these things I've been saying or not, but these politicians, they know how to get elected. And that's all they do when they're in office mostly is, how do I get reelected? Which group should I align myself with that has enough money to put in my coffers so I can get reelected? I told you, Lou, if I ever got elected for any kind of office, I'd hire you, JD, that Cornell chick, Miss Stacy, Diane, some of these people I know from Twitter now.
We'd so much keep you straight, too. We would so keep you straight. Well, I mean, we'd be making sure you were doing what the people wanted you to do. Because you know us, I mean,
it should be 1 foot of humility. You work for those people in your district, dude. Yeah. You are not an entity unto yourself. Your power is loaned to you. Loaned to you by the people.
I know. I've heard Louis Gohmert. I've heard Mark Meadows. I've heard Jim Jordan say that, and that's about it. I think maybe Darrell Issa.
Yeah, I think Cruz knows that.
I think I think I've heard him say it. So
I think
one senator.
I think as soon as Donald Trump gets elected and Stacey has to go throw up in the toilet,
she probably would. Yeah.
She's going to owe me a steak when Mrs. Clinton gets indicted, and I'm going to hold her to it. Of course, I won't make her pay. You know me, I'm a gentleman. I won't make her pay. I'll make her show up,
in this.
And I'll let her pinch my cheeks together. I shouldn't say that. She squeezes my face together. Some people would hear pinches my cheeks and think of something else because how some people are. But so I just
nobody thought that but you, Doc.
Oh gosh, I'm so in the gutter. Teen Angel, shut up. Well,
your fly boy were used to
I have all these names, these nicknames and call signs, and maybe if we get more than 2 listeners, they'll actually start understanding why I call you Wench, why I'm called Teen Angel and Dr. A or Randy. You can call me whatever you want. I don't care. But it's just ironic that I let Bob talk. I thought I was a perfect gentleman with him, like I was the week before with the Tamara Holder interview. Like I do in the university. I let them talk. I don't interrupt them, and when it's my turn to talk, the break in the action, I'll chime in, give them my opinion. But I let them talk, and I do use platonic argument, on them to get them to understand the truth. A lot of people don't know the truth, Lou. They have been mind raped. Take a drink. To believe that certain truths are lies, and that certain lies are the truth. And until we can convince them otherwise and really, save them, have an emancipation proclamation for these people that have been mind raped, we're in deep trouble because half the country is that way. And
I think we added another drinking word too, by the way.
Okay, all right. Well, half the people, I think, on the left, and there's some knuckleheads on the right, don't get me wrong, and I want to say that to Livingston, that Mr. Obama is doing a lot of this fundamental transformation, with the assistance of Republicans who are Republicans in name only, who believe in big government and strong government power. They don't believe in limited government anymore and individual liberty. It's about big government and the collective. and you just shut up, do what you're told, and I'm going to stay in power, wear my Armani suit, and I'm going to go to the Capitol Grill, and I'm going to become a millionaire on $174,000 a year. How does that happen, Lou? How does a congressman or a senator, member of the House or the Senate, $174,000 a year become a millionaire? Do you ever thought of that?
I don't. If the listeners don't have enough sense to kind of see that one coming, I don't see how it cannot be grift or graft, but but I'm sure their lawyers would argue otherwise.
We have bribery and blackmail running rampant in the United States.
Legal blackmail? Legal bribery.
Yeah. Go watch Mr. Smith goes to Washington, people. It ain't changed since Jimmy Stewart made that film. It's the same dynamic. Watch it. That's an older film. I'm probably dating myself. I'm probably a little bit younger than Lou and JD and Stacy, but go watch that film. It's the same exact dynamic in Congress.
And this is where I tell you, you've got a minute to get out of this episode of the show.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the 2 to 3 listeners that we have out there. Thank you very much. And those of you I call it the romper room. And Lou Esposito, my producer, teases me when I say that. They want to call it the chat room. I call it the romper room because when I go in there, all I see is
fun.
It's fun. I see older kids that are perpetual 16-year-olds cutting up, teasing up. And I like that. And so I get in there, I make a few comments, and then I jump out. But maybe we'll have somebody in the romper room today at 3 o'clock with Office Hours of Dr. A. But I got to tell you this. I love the United States of America. I want you to love her too. Speak the truth boldly with confidence, and then endure those inevitable consequences and trolls that come your way. And let liberty ring. God Himself help us, Lou. Did I talk for a minute?
Yeah, I hear that, Dr. A. And we'll be right back here next week for Office Hours, and I'll see you Thursday night right here on K98 on For Whom the Bell Tolls.
I will be listening to that. I had a fun time. I had to work with my pilots the other night. I teach them to go to war, but I tuned in the last 20 minutes or so and was listening to you talking to some woman. I don't know who it was, but I was listening.
Wait, you just called one of your brothers a woman?
Oh wait, I wasn't. Oh, well,
hey, Hammy, did you hear that?
Who was it? Who were you interviewing last week?
I wasn't interviewing. It was me and Hammy. You just called you just called one of your aviator brothers.
I must have. Oh, it was Hammy. I'm sorry. Forgive me, sir.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of the last time I was listening to another show.
And you're hoping I edited that out.
Hey, when are you going to get Kelly Ward on with Dr. A? I need to grill her because I don't know anything about her, and if she's going to beat out McCain, I need to talk to her because I know all about McCain.
Well, let's reach out to Kelly.
Why don't you do that?
Okay, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right,
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 $3 of pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.